Ruthless Compassion is a podcast that shows you how to become fiercely kind. I'm the host, Dr. Marcia Sirota, and in each episode, I get into it with experts and regular folks about the things that get in the way of what we want. Things like addiction and mental health, isolation and loneliness, difficult family and work relationships, and the importance of self-care. I want to help you overcome the obstacles to living your best life, and I want to inspire you to become a powerful kindness warrior. Sherianna Boyle has a master's in education as well as a certificate of advanced graduate study in school psychology from the University of Massachusetts, Boston. She's been a featured presenter for PESI Behavioral and Mental Health Education for Professional Credit, and she currently works as an adjunct psychology professor at Cape Cod Community College. She is a professional blogger for spirituality and health, an expert on the Simple Habit app, and founder of Emotional Detox Coaching, Emotional Detox Podcast, and the Cleanse Method. She teaches yoga and leads workshops and retreats, including teaching at the Kripalu Health and Yoga Center in Massachusetts. Welcome, Sherianna Boyle, to the Ruthless Compassion podcast.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, I have to confess that I was walking through a bookstore not that long ago, and I saw your book, Emotional Detox, and my face lit up, I suppose, because I was like, wow, that's a really interesting idea. So I thought, I have to talk to this person. This is a very interesting idea. But maybe before we do that, we can just talk a little bit about who you are and what you do so the listener has a little background.
Sure. Yeah. So what I do is I call myself an emotional detox coach. And I have a business where I work with people and I basically teach the steps that are written in emotional detox. And I'm an adjunct psychology professor. So I do that and I teach yoga. But mainly my focus is on the work as an emotional detox and teaching people how to use the steps, which are in the acronym of CLEANSE.
And what got you doing emotional detox work? And obviously we'll talk more about what emotional detox is, but how did you get going doing this kind of work?
So Emotional Detox was my 7th book, and an Emotional Detox for Anxiety is the 8th book. So it followed after that one. But the one previous to that was called Mantras Made Easy. So when I wrote Mantras Made Easy, I decided to have a pretty solid mantra practice. I had a Sanskrit practice. I had a couple of mantras that I'd written down in English. And when you really learn about mantras and the history, it's a real committed spiritual practice. So I'm writing the book and particularly in the mornings, I'm walking my dog and I'm reciting my mantras out loud for 90 days. And when you recite a mantra out loud in a true mantra practice, it is around a pair of mala beads, which is 180 beads. So that's a lot of mantras. And so one of my mantras was something like, I can't remember the exact words, but it was something about, now that I know the truth, my marriage is spiritually, emotionally, and physically connected. Now that I know the truth, my marriage is spiritually, emotionally, and physically connected. Something, it might have been a little different, but something of that along the lines. And I would repeat it over and over again. So I published Mantras Made Easy, and I'm literally at the gym, and I walk out of the gym with my girlfriend who is an editor. And I look at her and I said, Emotional Detox. And she said, what? I said, it's my next book, Emotional Detox. And she said, I really like that. And I just went on this quest for, okay, what are emotions? How do we feel them? What happens when we don't feel them? Do they ever go away? And it was just ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. Like, all these questions came into my mind. So I started researching. I researched and I presented the research to a publisher. And they said, this looks good. Go back and do more research. So I went back, did more research. And then they said, okay, you've got something and we will move forward with you. Great, right? So I am pumped because it's a really big publisher. It's Simon and Schuster. And I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. 6 weeks after I did my research, I got hit with the biggest emotional, which ends up hitting you physical trauma that of my life. It just knocked me out of nowhere. I did not see it coming. And I'm like, oh man. And it had to do with my marriage. Now, mind you, I was asking for the truth, right? And boy, did I get it. And then when I found out the truth of what was really going on with my marriage, I realized this isn't just about research anymore. I am in this. And so I went back to the publisher and I said, I am in a crisis. I'm in trauma. I cannot write this book right now, which was heartbreaking because I worked so hard to get to that place. But they understood, and I took some time and then eventually picked up the computer again, and it started to come out. And that's when the cleanse was born, the steps of an emotional detox. So it was something I went through myself. And now I support other people and helping them to really learn, understand, and put this practice into their daily life.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm really sorry that you had to go through such a hard time. It sounds like it was pretty painful. And second of all, I want to say how it's sort of like synchronicity, right?
Absolutely. It was painful. It was the most painful thing I've ever been through. However, I've learned so much. And honestly, my marriage truly is what I was asking for. I've been married for 21 years, almost 22 years now. And I feel like it's a different marriage. It's not even the same marriage. And yet it's the same person. So I feel very blessed and that I am able to see the other side. And it was from a practice of really learning to feel at what is coming up. And it wasn't just about the marriage, of course. It's about our history. It's about our childhoods. It's about what we've been suppressing for a long time. And then sometimes it just all comes to a head and it has to stare you right in the face before you realize, oh man, there's some things that I've been burying within myself and that's been being buried in the marriage. So it was on both sides. So I feel very blessed. I don't really look at it that way anymore. It was painful, but there's been so many blessings from it that I'm very grateful now that I have this information.
For sure. I think that every painful experience is an opportunity to learn. I always say when your heart breaks, it can also break open. So that's the way I always try to look at it. Doesn't mean it's not painful and doesn't mean you don't need to kind of go and lick your wounds for a while, but there are always wonderful opportunities because I think at least from my perspective, when we are in a crisis, that's when we are stripped down to our essential nature. And that's when we can kind of truly rediscover who we are.
And what we're capable of.
Exactly. Yeah. The strength, the inner resources that we have that have been held in abeyance until this crisis hit. Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned emotions and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about emotions before we talk about emotional detox, because obviously I want the listeners to really understand what they're supposed to be detoxing. So what's going on with our emotions? Why do we hold them in? Why don't we feel them? What's going on that we get all into trouble with our emotions? Because it's a natural part of who we are, but it seems to be a part that many people struggle with.
Yeah, I think for one, it's the way that we're taught about emotions. We're taught that, we're taught that they're either good or bad. Right? That we have good emotions, we have bad emotions, we have better emotions, worse emotions. And we're taught that labeling them is the most important part, which really isn't the most important part. It doesn't actually help you feel them when you label them. That's what I've found in creating the cleanse. I think that people see emotions as perhaps making things worse, right? If I feel it, it's going to be awful. it's going to be awful. But I always say it's the non-feeling, it's the resistance to feeling that creates pain, not feeling itself. If you actually feel your feelings, you will feel better. And the more you practice it, the quicker it happens for you. So emotions are not the problem. It's really our reactions. And the reactions are the ways that we have learned to make the uncomfortable comfortable. How have we learned to make an uncomfortable emotion comfortable? What have we done? How do we behave? Do we avoid? Do we bury? Do we project? Do we gossip? Do we blame? Do we put down, criticize? Do we stuff? Do we turn to addiction? How have we learned to make the uncomfortable comfortable? And some of the ways we do that is we get into these narratives. I mean, that's a reaction. If I'm talking about my emotions, I could be suppressing them. And I'm not against talking. I think that's an important part of the healing journey. But what I really find helpful for people is if they can make feeling a priority. So feel first, and then if necessary, you can talk about it. But we've been kind of doing the opposite. We've been talking about it and then maybe getting a few glimpses of feeling in there.
Yeah, I remember going to a class in psychoanalytic psychotherapy, and I asked one of the teachers. I didn't stick through the whole class because it was very discouraging, but probably around week 3, I think that was my last week out of the 9-week class, I asked one of the teachers, what is the goal of psychoanalytic psychotherapy? And she said, to have more insight. And I went, okay, and then what? And she said, no, the insight is the goal. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, that and, $4 can get you a Starbucks. It won't get you change. So what I find is that we get into our heads and we, like you were saying, we label our feelings, or we analyze our feelings, or we organize our feelings, but we don't actually feel them. So what is the role of the mind in terms of how we deal with our feelings?
As far as the mind, so the mind is going to remember the trauma. The mind will always, the brain will take you back to the trauma, but the heart and the feeling will actually heal it. So if we're thinking about things, we really teeter on the edge of re-traumatizing ourselves. So the mind will let you know if you're in a trigger or not. That's where the mind can be helpful. And the mind is really for making decisions. I mean, that's really what the primary role is do the choices that I want to make. Do I want vanilla or chocolate ice cream? That's what the mind is for. But it's not for processing feelings. Feeling comes more from sensation and connection, and you have to include the body and the heart. And so we want to be able to observe the mind, because the mind will say, wait a minute. It'll let you know if you're distracted, for one, if you're thinking a lot, and also the quality of your thoughts. So if the thoughts are very negative or gloomy in nature, or if there's real hatred or animosity coming up in the mind, meaning your thoughts are tainted with fear about the future, or you're hooking into the past, the mind will let you know, wait a minute, I am not feeling at all. I'm in a trigger. I'm remembering something and I'm rerunning it. And the thing is, your body will really believe that you're going through it again. And so we want to be able to observe our minds and notice when it is time to cleanse. And if I'm distracted, if I'm thinking a lot, and then the quality of thoughts, and also being able to notice if I'm breathing or not. And if I'm not breathing, then I'm probably in a trigger. And here's the other thing. A lot of triggers have to do with they don't even have to do with the thing that's happening right in front of you. They come from childhood. They come from a time where maybe you weren't even verbal yet. And do you try to figure that out? Well, you could if you choose to. But I say, before you make that decision, notice that there's something coming up and choose to feel it. So I can use my mind and I can say, okay, I notice those 3 things and I'm in a trigger and now I have a choice. I can either go down the road of revisiting and re-traumatizing and rehashing, or I can choose to heal.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of a devil's advocate question, because I'm going to take the point of view of some of my patients who I've encountered over the years. And one of the big issues I found with my patients is that when they are about to have a feeling, they become overwhelmed because from their perspective, when they had those feelings originally, they were very small and very helpless and they didn't have any recourse. And so when they start having these feelings today, they imagine themselves to be small and helpless and unable to, defend themselves from the pain. And they feel that these feelings are going to drive them crazy or kill them or make them do something bad. So they defend against the feelings because they don't believe that they have the capacity to tolerate the feelings. What would you say about those kinds of people who say, no, I can't feel anything because it's going to kill me or drive me crazy or make me murder somebody if I actually get in touch with that feeling?
So that's why the cleanse goes in order. So it's an acronym, but it's designed to be in a specific sequence. And you always start with step 1. And that step 1 is it's for exactly that. And that is, you do not start focusing on processing until you tone your vagus nerve. And that is the number 1 step in the cleanse, which is called clear reactivity. And it gives you very simple tools. You don't need anything to tone your vagus nerve. There's ways that you can do it with a professional, but there's ways that you can do it on your own as well. Every day, just like brushing your teeth, it's important to tone your nerve. Because if that person is afraid to feel, what that tells us is that there's a real disconnect between the mind and the body. And there's a person in fight or flight or freeze response or fix response. And so I would begin there. I would say, stay with step 1 for a while. Don't even worry about step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I find just giving them permission to stick with step 1 is all they need to hear. They eventually actually want to go on to the other steps, but just knowing that you can take your time with the process. There's no rush. There's no finish line when it comes to your emotions. And so there's really about engaging in practices, very simple things such as, well, for some people, it'll be breathing. For some people, it'll be stretching. Some people, it might be drinking a glass of very cold water, tones your vagus nerve. Some people, it might be just yawning. And so using these simple mindful tools will help them to get enough energy in their body so they're able to move to the next steps. So that's what I would say to that person is they really need to do that step 1 and make it a daily practice.
I need to kind of rewind a little bit and go back to ask you this question, which is who would need an emotional detox? Like what kind of a person would need it? Because a lot of people will say, I don't need that. That sounds like, something that isn't relevant to me. But who would actually need an emotional detox? Maybe people who don't realize that they might be a candidate for it.
Well, certainly if you're suffering from anxiety, and there's many different ranges of that, if you find yourself worrying and thinking, I think that's a big sign that you've got emotions coming up. I'm a certified yoga instructor, and back in the day when I got trained, we were taught to really see the thought and observe the thought and just sort of give yourself space from the thought. And in the emotional detox perspective, if a thought keeps revisiting you, then maybe you're supposed to pay attention, not so much to the exact thought or the story, but maybe it's a signal that there's an emotion in you looking to come up to be healed. And this thought is suppressing it. It's the way that you slam it back down. You just keep repeating this thought and repeating this story out loud or in your head, repeating this belief, this mindset, or this view. And every time you do that, smack, can't come up, can't feel it, can't see it, doesn't exist. But it does exist. They don't just go away on their own. So eventually I find we say, that's come up a few times for me. I'm all week. I keep thinking it could be something completely stupid. But yet it keeps resurfacing. How about I take a moment and just acknowledge it? Because something in me, there's an emotion underneath there. And it always begins with that step one. I won't go to step two without toning the vagus nerve first. I believe that to push on and start digging in without a mind and a body connection is a disservice to yourself and is a disservice to others, because you could not always, if you don't have a relationship with that person, or you're in a tough spot in your life, high stress levels, you could re-traumatize yourself. And then it feels like, oh boy, this is too much. I can't handle this. So I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. And I think it's an important answer, because I think a lot of people, because they're afraid to connect with their emotions, they're afraid of this idea of emotional detox. But moving forward, I just wanted you to kind of maybe go through it. There's a lot of steps, and it might be a little bit more than we can get through in depth today. But perhaps you can kind of briefly go through the steps of the emotional detox with your cleanse method, just to give people an idea of what they might be doing if they do the detox, if they read the book, or if they work with you.
Yeah. So again, that first step is going to be about toning your vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve in your body, and it connects and it intersects with most of your organs, particularly your intestine, the small and large intestine, and your spleen and your heart and your pancreas and your gallbladder. So it impacts quite a bit. And so the first thing you do is you learn ways that you can tone it to work for you. So it could be as simple as a neck stretch, stretching your right ear to your right shoulder, and then bringing your head back to center, and stretching your left ear to your left shoulder, and bringing your head back to center, and maybe rolling your shoulders around a little bit and getting things kind of moving. And I don't know if you just did that as I was saying it or if anybody out there, but you can already, once you do that in step one, you feel a little bit of shift. And then the step two, there's a statement that they say out loud to themselves. And what that is, that's the part where you acknowledge the emotions, because they do need to be acknowledged. And if we skip right to an affirmation, some people, and I know these things have worked for people, but when it comes to the emotional detox perspective, we don't go right to affirming what we want to be thinking about. We take a moment and we actually acknowledge what might be coming up. But the way that we do that in step two might be different than what we've been taught. And that is, we don't actually label the emotions that come up. And so I guide you in how to do it in a new way. And that, again, takes practice. And then the third step is we produce energy. And we do that, and that came from all of my research, which is the E. So we've been through C, we've been through L, which is look inward, and that's the acknowledgement of the emotions that are attempting to come up. The E is the third step, and we produce energy. And the way that I suggest is through sound, through mantra. And that was based on my research. The fourth step is activate, which is where we tap into the power of visualizations. And again, directing you how to do that. There's specific statements for that as well. And then the N is the nourish. And that is the feeling part. We nourish ourselves with the feeling body. Also, there's tools in there in that part where we learn skills. We have to, it's one thing to feel your feelings, but then you go back to life and you have to incorporate some new skills. And the good news is I find the skills stick once you are in a feeling state. If you ever notice, when you're in a reactive state, things don't stick. We don't do it. Well, maybe we do it for a day or two and then we're back to the way we were. So this feeling state that we're cultivating, then by the time we're in the nourish phase, we're building and creating new dynamics within ourselves and with each other, how we interact with ourselves and others. And then the S is the surrender. And that's really where free will comes in. And that's the piece where you really connect to, it's up to you. It is your choice whether you want to allow this transformation to happen in your life. Nobody can do it for you. You can be guided, but ultimately you make that choice. Once you make that choice, it will naturally spill into the final step, which is ease, which is you become it. And that's really the goal, right? Is full integration. I don't want to just talk about my feelings. I don't want to just think about my feelings. I want to actually have an experience where I become them, where I feel my feelings. And it's an enmeshment there's an integration. And when you are in a feeling state, everything shifts. You're in a higher consciousness, higher awareness state. The way you see things shifts, the choices that you make. Back to, integrating why have an emotional detox, because it changes everything. I think it's for everyone of all ages. It may change what you have for lunch based on connecting the mind and the body. It impacts every move that you make from there on. So for me, it's not just, I'm going to go on a detox and then see what happens. It's kind of like a meditation or yoga or whatever that you prefer to do daily, take a walk. It is a daily practice, but nobody's been taught. So it's going to take some time before we get there. But when we do, you're going to find that it was well worth the journey.
So again, another little devil's advocate question, because I'm just thinking from the perspective of some of my patients in my practice. So they would say to me, like, I can't get in touch with my feelings, because if I get in touch with my feelings, if I surrender and go into this place of ease, I'll just be this big ball of mush. I'll just, be completely passive. I won't do anything. I'll just be feeling all the time. I won't have a thought in my mind. I won't have any motivation. I need my brain to guide me and to motivate me. And if I start having just feelings, I'll be, unable to function. So what would you say to that thought?
I would say you haven't really felt your feelings. And so that is why I'm grateful for people like you who allow me to come on and talk about it, because there is a learning curve. And I do feel that people need to have support in the beginning and be guided through. But what I feel is when you're feeling your feelings, it is not about floating around. You won't be floaty. It's not like being absent-minded. If anything, when you truly in a feeling state, you feel whole, you feel grounded, you feel connected, you feel alert, you feel focused, and you feel present, and you feel energized. So if they have this belief that they're just going to be floating around and nothing's going to get done and they're just going to be, like on a drug or something, that's not the case. When you feel you are incredibly resourceful, far more resourceful than the amount of energy it takes to resist feeling all day long. People lose so much energy pushing this process away. It is actually, it is so exhausting, and it puts so much strain on the mind and the body. And then you have to recover, and you have to repair, and you have to figure out how to pick yourself up again and go get a coffee or something to be able to function. That's what it's like to live in non-feeling. To live in a feeling state is extremely, and that's what I hope people take from this, is that your emotions are a resource, not a barrier. They are like medicine, but they have to be processed to be able to serve you.
And that's where the cleanse comes in.
Yeah.
After you wrote Emotional Detox, you wrote Emotional Detox for Anxiety. And I'm wondering what, made you think that you needed to add this additional book in terms of, specifically for anxiety?
What made me realize is people needed more hand holding through the process. People really were enjoying Emotional Detox. They loved the concept. They loved the idea that, wow, really? It's just from suppressing my emotions. And so I took a lot of the feedback from the core book that I got from folks as I traveled around, as emails, and whatnot. And I said, I got to make this really specific. And so I decided to just really apply it to anxiety, mainly because anxiety is through the roof. And and I'm a former school psychologist, so my heart is always with children. And I work with a lot of adults, but I also have children and teens that come see me. And I just felt like I needed to get more specific. And so in the Emotional Detox for Anxiety book, there's charts. There is a step by step by step. This is how you use it for this. This is how you use it. I mean, it's just really walks you through the process. So it really was from people wanting more and needing more support. And so that's where that book came in.
That's cool. It's funny because when I was, reading the books, I was seeing that there's a lot of information. And I was thinking that people might be overwhelmed by all the information. And what you're saying is actually people wanted more information. So it just goes to show, right, that if it's the right kind of information, it's like nourishment. It's like food, right? People want more.
Yeah, it would have been too much to try to hone in on every little thing that's happening. So I just took anxiety because I believe anxiety is the basis for a lot of illnesses and disharmony and difficulties. It's really at the root of so many perceived problems out there. So yeah, I think people wanted more specifics. And so that takes everything, and I put it all in that book for them.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, without breaking anyone's confidentiality, if you have a story of someone who, sort of before and after went through the emotional detox and what they were like before and then what happened to them on the other side.
Yeah, I think that, several people come to mind. I think that one of the stories that comes to mind is someone who suffered from OCD for most of her life, obsessive compulsive disorder. And she had been to traditional therapy for about 10 years, and that certainly helped her quite a bit. And then when she came and started to learn about emotional detox, she really enjoyed it. And it didn't even took maybe 8 months or something. And now she's on her way. She feels like it's been the one thing that was missing for her. And granted, it's all a journey, and we're drawn to whatever we need at the right time. But for her, she's the way she handles her relationships, the way, as far as all the, I wouldn't even identify her with someone who has OCD. I don't think she would identify herself. It's taken her in a whole new direction. She sees life differently. She's very confident, empowered. I think what I hear a lot from people is it's nice to have a structure. So you're having an off day and you're like, what do I do? What do I do? Which tool do I use? It's like, oh, okay, wait a minute. I go to the cleanse and I start with step 1. So it never changes. You always have a structure. I always say, when in doubt, cleanse. You'll never hurt yourself, right? Or you never hurt anybody else. When you don't know what to do, cleanse. And let it arrive naturally. And I think that's been what I've seen most from people is they like having a structure. They get a relationship with it and they learn to trust. And really that structure is them. It's their emotions. It's not me, and it's not even the methodology. It's the fact that they've taken themselves through the process of learning how to feel, and they're learning to trust themselves. And they're learning to value their emotions as a resource.
That sounds very nice. Is there anything else that you're working on these days that the listeners might be interested in finding out about?
Of course, yes. So I'm writing another emotional detox book, believe it or not. There is more. So that won't be out for till the end of this new year. But as far as I have an audio, I have a daily cleanse that I just threw on my website that people can purchase. I have a course I just uploaded the other day. I have a podcast, Emotional Detox, and I'm going to be at, I don't know, I'm not sure where you are, but I'm going to be at Kripalu in Lenox, Mass on January 30th, Emotional Detox Level 1. So that by the end of the weekend, you will have a daily practice. You will know how to implement it inside and out. So I also will be in California in February at 1440. And that will be another opportunity for people to, for the weekend, learn the cleanse, practice, go home with it.
So there's lots of good stuff. And where can people find you if they're interested in any of these things?
I'm at Sherianna, which is Sherianna Boyle, BOYLE.com. So it's SheriannaBoyle.com.
That's pretty easy. And just before we leave, I mean, we've talked a lot about emotions and doing the cleanse and connecting, but is there any call to action that you can offer the listeners, that something that they can take with them after this very interesting discussion?
I always say that your awareness is enough, that the moment you become aware, you've already shifted. And so just having this conversation and becoming aware of your emotions and knowing that they think of them, and this is where emotional detox people find that beneficial, is think of it like food. If you eat a piece of food, you have to chew it, right? You have to chew it, and then you have to swallow it, and then it's got to run its course. And then eventually it's, parts of it is excreted and some of it is absorbed into your body and you get the nutrients. It's the same thing with your emotions. They have a process. And when you fully digest them, when you fully process them, then you gain nutrients, you gain benefits in the form of energy and healing and awareness and insight and grounding. But if you don't allow yourself to have that process, it's no different than food. You just keep eating. You don't even know what's digested, what's not. And before you know it, you're off spinning and eating things you don't even want to eat. And there's no awareness and there's no connection and and then you feel crummy and bloated and inflamed. It's the same thing with your emotions. So just making some space for that. And once you learn the steps, you'll realize that it's a very simple process that really will take you only 5 minutes once you learn it.
Well, that's a very helpful little call to action for the listeners. And I want to thank you for coming on the show today, because I think your message is so important. I think we really have kind of gotten away from our feelings, and I think it's always important to find that awareness and come back and deal with them so that we can live our best lives. So I really appreciate you speaking with me today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And Happy New Year.
You as well.
That was the delightful Sherianna Boyle, and I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota. If you liked this podcast, please review it on iTunes And you can sign up for my free monthly wellness newsletter at marciasarotamd.com, where you'll also learn about my new online course about how to deal with difficult people.